Howdy, friends. I'm Joel Empey, and welcome to another episode of Joel Empey Talks NFL. And on today's episode, we're going to look at suicide survivor picks for Week 5 in the NFL. We're going to talk about my favorite bets of the week for Week 5 in the NFL. And then, of course, we're going to end the episode with waiver wire streaming targets for your fantasy football team. But we're going to start today's episode a little bit differently than we have in the past. Obviously, now we're in week 4 is come and gone. We're a quarter of the way through the NFL's regular season, and I'm going to give my power rankings at this point. So I think power rankings, it's a little bit redundant to do week to week, to do it every single week. It's just too time consuming, and the league is so volatile. You can just overreact every week. But if you break the season down into 4 quarters, I really think that we can get a much more accurate view and objective view of what the power rankings should really look like. So being at the end of the conclusion of the first quarter of the NFL season, I'm going to give my power rankings now. I got number 1, the Chiefs, number 2, the Patriots, number 3, the Packers, number 3, the Cowboys, number 4, the Packers, number 5, the Saints, number 6, the Eagles, number 7, the Lions, number 8, the Bills, 9, Bears, 10, Panthers, 11, 49ers, 12, Seahawks, 13, Rams, 14 Browns, 15 Vikings, 16 Ravens, 17 Texans, 18 Colts, 19 Chargers, 20 Jaguars, 21 Titans, 22 Bucks, 23 Falcons, 24 Steelers, 25 Raiders, 26 Broncos, 27 Cardinals, 28 Bengals, 29 Giants, 30 Jets, 31 Redskins, and 32 the Miami Dolphins. So now let's talk suicide survivor picks, locks of the week, whatever you want to call it, for Week 5. I'm still alive in both my suicide pools. I'm hoping that you're doing the same. Last week was a rough one. There was actually quite a few upsets last week. You know, the Bucks beating the Rams. The Raiders beating the Colts. There were some upsets last week for sure. This week, I'm hoping to give you guys a little bit better advice, although my top picks have always panned out. Anyways, this week I got number 1, Patriots over the Redskins. If you haven't used the Patriots yet, it doesn't get any easier than this. You might as well use them now. We're already into Week 5. Patriots I have as the number 2 team, and Redskins I have as the second worst team. So that's a no-brainer. My second lock of the week, I got the Eagles over the Jets. Sure, the Jets are coming off a bye week, but the Eagles are just heating up. They're just getting better and better. Jets are one of the worst teams in the league. Eagles are one of the best teams in the league. That's a no-brainer. Number 3, I have the Vikings over the Giants. I think the Vikings just stomp out these lower-ranked teams. It's going to be a bloodbath out there. Number 4, I have as my last suicide pick, survivor pick, lock of the week. I got the Bears over the Raiders. It's in London. The Raiders are 8 time zones away. They're flying literally like halfway across the whole world practically to play this game. Khalil Mack's going to be coming for blood. This Bears defense is not playing around. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, but the Bears are going to win handily. So, my 4 suicide picks of the week. Patriots over the Redskins, number 1. Eagles over the Jets, number 2. Vikings over the Giants, number 3. Bears over the Raiders, number 4. Lock those in, baby. Bets that I like here in Week 5. Number 1 bet that I really like, Vikings -5 versus the Giants. The Vikings are going to win this game by double-digit points. So I absolutely love this bet. I expect this line to grow as the week goes on to maybe 6, 7, even 8 points. If it gets to 8... I might think twice about it, even though I'm pretty damn positive that the Vikings are going to just pillage the freaking Giants. Double-digit win, I'm thinking. Because the Vikings smash these lower-ranked teams. Vikings over Atlanta in Week 1, 28-12. Vikings over the Raiders in Week 3, 34-13. So the Raiders and the Falcons, both better teams than the Giants, for sure. Don't be fooled by the 2-game win streak of the Giants. They've They won because of a missed field goal, and then they won because they played the Redskins, who, put Dwayne Haskins in there. It was just a bloodbath out there for the Redskins. They're just, the second worst team in the league next to the Dolphins. So don't be fooled by the 2-game win streak. The Giants are not a good football team. They can't play defense. They don't have Saquon. Daniel Jones, even in a dominant victory last week, only had 1 touchdown and he threw 2 picks. He didn't have the same kind of rushing output that he did against the Bucs. So I think the Vikings are going to win by double digits in this one. So -5, that's an easy lock-in. That's my number 1 bet of the week. My next bet of the week, number 2 bet of the week, is the Cardinals and the Bengals. I like the over in this game. It's a 48-point over-under, so that's a pretty high over. I'm hoping that maybe comes down a little bit. If it continues to go up, I might, stay away from this one. But, unless if Andy Dalton, like I said earlier, I'm recording this before Monday Night Football, so I don't know. If Dalton gets injured or something, my mind would change on that. The fact that I think this is going to be a shootout, but I think this is just a game with 2 inept defenses and 2 offenses that are highly capable of scoring points. So, I see this being like a 30-24. Maybe both teams breaking the 30-point barrier. I would not be surprised. I don't know who's going to win that one, but I am pretty certain that it's going to be a track meet. 48 as the over-under. I like the over for sure. Like I said, I think 30-24 is like my somewhat conservative estimation. With still having a high estimation, that's still like my somewhat conservative. So even if it gets up to 49 or 50, I would still be thinking about the over. And if it comes down from 48 at all, I'm hammering this bet. I love the over in the Cardinals versus the Bengals in Week 5 at 48 points. My number 3 bet of the week is the under in the Bears versus the Raiders. Now, this is a game in London. It's so many time zones away. It's notoriously tough on offenses because it's like, the preseason or early season football when or Thursday games is another great example of this. It's a lot harder for offenses to make the adjustments than it is for defenses because, when an offense has a hard time scoring, it's just, like their rhythm's not clicking, it just favors the defense, right? Like if your rhythm's not clicking, then you're not completing passes. So like, even if you're throwing incompletions, it's just favoring the defense. My only concern in this is that the Bears defense it takes away the ball so much and so effectively and, maybe scores some defensive touchdowns or creates so many short field opportunities that the Bears put up 30 points or, 35 points themselves. But the fact that it's very, very highly likely that Chase Daniels is going to be there. They're going to have a conservative game plan offensively. The Raiders are going to to say that the Raiders are going to struggle to score points against the Bears, I think is an understatement. They're going 8 time zones over. That's going to be tough on them. Big flights for both teams. I just see this game being a game of inept offense, from a really conservative play calling on the Bears side and, Bears defense sort of running away with it. I think that the game, a scoreline that I see is like 20-6, maybe, for the Bears, that type of a score line, which would be well under the 41-point limit. Like I said, my only concern is that the Bears defense takes away the ball / scores themselves so many times that, they put up over 30 points themselves and actually, actually it shoots the point total up. But I'm feeling pretty damn confident in this one. I love the under in a London game. Both teams having to travel far. They're going to be lethargic offensively, very conservative offensively. Even the Raiders are going to be conservative offensively because they understand that they're playing the most elite defense in the NFL. They're not going to be trying to drop back and and Derek Carr's not going to be crazy about trying to extend plays and make plays. Like, they're going to be just trying to, if it's not there, just get rid of the football. Don't give up too many negative plays. In the Raiders' mind, the way for them to win is going to be by taking care of the football and just playing defense themselves. So I love the under in this game. Those are my 3 bets of the week, top 3 bets of the week. Once again, number 1, Vikings -5 versus the Giants. Lock that one in before that line gets gets worse for the Vikings' favor. I like the over in Cardinals versus Bengals. That's going to be a shootout in games of inept defenses who have scoring potential on offense, and then the under in the Bears versus the Raiders. Time zones, long flights, good defense, conservative offense. That screams a low-scoring game to me. So those are my top 3 bets of the week. All right, guys, now it's time for fantasy football talk. I'm going to be more concise with this stuff. So my number 1 wide receiver, I'm only going to give one guy here, Mohamed Sanu. He's a guy that you can take and put into your lineup right now as a pretty safe flex wide receiver 3 type of play. Atlanta's defense is bad. Their offense is good. That spells greatness for the players on that offense. We're seeing Hooper and Sanu really start to garner the targets on that offense. And so I really like Sanu with Ridley's regression and his injuries that he's had over the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, Sanu has 18 targets to Ridley's just 7 targets. So Sanu has potential right now to just come into your lineup and offer you starting potential. I like him a lot better than somebody like, let's say, A.J. Brown, who only had 3 targets last week. You might look at the bottom line and see A.J. Brown had 2 touchdowns and over 90 yards and think, wow, this guy's so good. That's not consistent. That's not sustainable. And you're tying yourself to Marcus Mariota, who has a great defense. That's the real identity of their team, the defense and the run game over there in Tennessee. Compared to Atlanta, they're going to be a terrible defense. They're going to need to throw the ball to keep up at this point. And Sanu is a guy who's getting a lot of targets, with Ridley being a little bit gimped up. So, strike while the iron's hot. Particularly if you're a Ridley owner, you might want to be getting Sanu and putting him in your lineup until we see Ridley return to form. Now, my one running back for this week I like is Nyheim Hines, particularly if you're in PPR or half PPR. Nyheim Hines is an extremely safe flex play in the half PPR or PPR. He's debatably even an RB2 play for this 1 week as they're going up against the Chiefs. They're going to have to try to keep pace with the Chiefs, so they're going to have to throw the ball a ton to try to keep pace with them. Marlon Mack, he might be injured this week. He might be gone for the whole week. Even if he does play, he's not going to be at 100%. And sure, Jordan Wilkins should get the majority of that early down work if Marlon Mack doesn't play. But like I said, it's going to be a game that favors Hines. If they were playing a terrible team this week, I would say, hey, Wilkins might be the guy to go after. But because they're playing a really good team where they're going to have to throw the ball to try to keep up, it's going to be a Hines type of week. I like him as a flex play in standard for this week. If you need a guy to fill in for the week, he's a great flex play in standard. And in half point or full PPR, he has RB2 upside. So look for Nyheim Hines if you need a 1 week rental at running back, or just a streaming option for a week because of a bye, or because of injury or whatever it is. Nyheim Hines is a guy that you can rely on for this week. In tight end, I'm actually going to give 2 guys, but I'll be really brief. Number 1, I talked about him last week, Dawson Knox. He is, I don't want to say that he's a guaranteed starter, but this week he is playing the Titans. They're the 5th worst in the NFL in fantasy football terms against tight ends. So he's got a really favorable matchup. And at tight end, you're generally just streaming the position unless if you have, one of those very elite type of guys, which there's only like 5 or 6 of those guys. So if you don't have one of those very elite guys, you need a weekly streamer. And the nice thing about Dawson Knox is that he's a rookie, and on a 2-game sample size, he is looked to be pretty productive. And he's looked to be a target for Josh Allen and Matt Barkley. So no matter who's at quarterback there, they're going to like to dump the ball down, particularly against the Titans, who aren't good against covering tight ends. And Dawson Knox could pan out to be more. It's like when you pick up Austin Hooper to be to be like a streamer type of tight end, and now he's giving you extremely high production value. Dawson Knox, I'm not going to say he has Austin Hooper type of potential. I don't think he does. But he does have potential at a position that's such a crapshoot like tight end. He does have potential to be a weekly starter. And even if he's not a weekly starter, he's a great streaming option for this week. And we can see after that what type of player he truly is. Very quickly on another tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones. He seems to have a good place in this offense with David Njoku out. And the fact is that Baker Mayfield doesn't have time to look downfield. The O-line's non-existent over there. So Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be a safe dump down for Baker Mayfield. He's a good streaming option this week too. My number one defensive streaming option for this week is a team that's 47% owned. So there's a 53% chance that you can get them, 47% that they're owned. So not the best odds of being able to get them, but if they're available, this is the top option, and that's the Tennessee Titans. They actually have the 4th ranked fantasy football defense on the season so far this year. So, they should be much more owned than 47% that they are, and they have the Bills this week. So if Josh Allen does play, sure, the Bills have more offensive firepower in that case, but Josh Allen's a turnover machine. We saw it, against the Patriots. We saw it against the Jets in week 1. Josh Allen turns the ball over. He's a risk it for the biscuit kind of guy, and he's going to give away the ball a few times a game, at least once or twice a game. So they're a good defense if Josh Allen's playing, and if Josh Allen's not playing, they're going to be more conservative on the Bills, and they're going to be more low scoring. They're already a pretty low scoring offense. They're going to be very low scoring and very conservative. So expect, quality production out of the Titans defense with or without Josh Allen as the starting quarterback for the Bills. My number 2 streaming option for the week is the Carolina Panthers D. Now this D is 30% owned, so you have a pretty good chance that they're available in your league. And the Panthers are a surging team right now, and they're literally surging off of the strength of their defense and CMC. But their defense is really high quality right now. Over the last 2 games, they've got 14 sacks. Yeah, 14 sacks over the last 2 games and 3 interceptions. That is some elite shit right there. And they're playing Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars, who are a decent offense. Minshew's got that clutch factor to him, but he is still a rookie. He holds onto the ball a little too long sometimes, so he's susceptible to being sacked. He's susceptible to some rookie mistakes. I expect that it's going to be a low-scoring game either way, the Panthers and the Jaguars. So it's just a great week to play the Jaguars D. And you might even be able to hold on to them for 2 weeks. That's the nice thing about this defense, because they are playing Tampa the week after, which Tampa, sure, they had a really good offense this past week, but the Panthers played their offense pretty well a couple of weeks ago, so I think that they might have a recipe to be able to play well against them. And Jameis Winston, win or lose, great game or not, he is a turnover machine. He turned over the ball against the Rams. He's going to give you an interception at some point in the game. If Tampa goes off this week again, then, I would cool it maybe and not play the Panthers 2 weeks in a row. But you could pick up the Panthers for this week for sure. And if the Buccaneers look, Jameis Winston has the typical Jameis, hot game, cold game, like he's known to do, then you could play the Panthers for 2 weeks in a row. So that's the really nice thing about this defense to stream. Now, my third streaming option for this week is the 49ers. They had 2 weeks to prepare because they're coming off of a bye week, and they're playing the Browns, who, sure, they had a great week last week, but that was really mostly off of an immense effort from Nick Chubb. Baker Mayfield has 6 picks this season, at least 1 pick every game. He's been sacked 12 times this season, and this is in 4 games. 6 picks in 4 games, at least 1 pick every game. He's been sacked 12 times in 4 games. Did you know also that the 49ers, in terms of total fantasy points this season, are the 3rd ranked defense in fantasy football? They have the third most fantasy points this season, and they've only played 3 games. Everybody else has had 4 games to score points defensively. They've only had 3 games to score points defensively, and they're third. The only 2 teams that have scored more points in defenses in fantasy football are the Bears and the Patriots. That's wild, man. The 49ers defense is elite and nobody knows about it because they're only owned in 26% of leagues. Now, that's also partially and largely, I should say, because they were on a bye last week. But so, a lot of people, if they did even have them, they've been dropped. So you have a really good chance of being able to go out and get the 49ers this week. Like I said, Baker turns the ball over with interceptions and he gets sacked a lot, which the 49ers have an elite secondary and an elite pass rush, so expect them to add to those totals. I love the 49ers this week. I'm going to be definitely targeting them in fantasy. All right, now my top streaming options for quarterbacks in fantasy. My number 1 streaming option is Andy Dalton. Once again, for the 20th time in this episode, I'm recording this before Monday Night Football, so if there's an injury to Dalton or something crazy like that, then obviously this is not my number 1 pick. But as of now, he's playing the Cardinals, who are a horrendous defense in fantasy football. They're the 3rd worst in fantasy football to opposing quarterbacks. And Andy Dalton right now is averaging, this is before Monday Night Football, 18 fantasy points per game, which is good for the 10th ranked quarterback in fantasy football. He's only owned in 15% of leagues. People still have that previous prejudice. It takes people a little while to come around to new storylines in a season, and people haven't come around to Andy Dalton yet with the Zach Taylor offense. They don't even have AJ Green there. Joe Mixon's been a little bit banged up, and Andy Dalton is still producing big time. This Zach Taylor offense is pretty dang good. Pretty good for Andy Dalton. This Cardinals game and the Bengals game, provided that there's no crazy injuries to the Bengals tonight, is going to be a shootout. I'm picking the over in that game as one of my bets of the week. So you better believe I think that this is going to be a high-scoring affair, and Andy Dalton is going to feast on this horrendous Cardinals defense. Number 2 fantasy streaming option for the week is Jacoby Brissett. Little stat about Brissett, he has multiple touchdown passes in every single game this season. Multiple touchdown passes every game this season. They're playing the Kansas City Chiefs next week, so that's sure to be a high-scoring affair. They're going to have to throw the ball to keep up, so I'm expecting multiple touchdowns from Brissett again. The correlation between quarterbacks' fantasy points in a football game is very high. When 2 teams are playing each other and one team is scoring a lot of points, the other team is going to have to try to throw the ball a ton to try to keep up. So the correlation between opposing quarterbacks in a given football game is always high. So whenever you have a quarterback playing against Patrick Mahomes, that's an automatic boost in that quarterback's numbers. Jacoby Brissett has been very efficient, throwing multiple touchdown passes every single week so far this season. So in this matchup against the Chiefs, I love Brissett. And, if you can get T.Y. Hilton back, that's just all the better for him. He threw 3 touchdown passes last week without his top wide receiver. I love him against the Chiefs. The correlation between quarterbacks is very high. You gotta play Brissett this week if you need a quarterback. All right, 2 guys. These are emergency streaming situations. If you're just stuck between a rock and a hard place because of bye weeks or whatever, 2 guys that are very, very seldom owned in fantasy football that I think you can play in an absolute emergency pinch this week that could have they have a potential to have a great ROI, return on investment. So these guys, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is playing the horrible Giants defense, bottom 3 at best defense in the NFL. So he's going to have an absolute opportunity to feast this week. The one thing that gives you a reservation is, in week 1, Kirk Cousins only threw the ball 10 times because they had such a positive game script. So something like that could easily happen again. They could, be up by a ton and just feed Dalvin, feed Alexander Mattison, just run the ball. And if they do that, Kirk Cousins could throw the ball 10, 12 times and end up having an absolute stinker of a day. But this Giants defense is so bad, and the Vikings are going to have such a bad taste in their mouth after not throwing the ball downfield at all last week. I could see Kirk Cousins easily throwing 2-3 touchdowns. Even if he might only throw 150 yards, but still throw 2 or 3 touchdowns. He could also throw, 250, 300 yards and, 3-4 touchdowns. Like, he could have a boom of a day. The thing that scares me about Kirk is that the ceiling potential is very high, but the floor potential is so damn low that he is very frightening to play. So I'll give you a guy who's got a bit of a higher floor, but not nearly the same kind of ceiling. So he's a less risky, less rewardy type of a player, and that's Joe Flacco. So Joe Flacco has been a mediocre quarterback his entire career, let's say, but particularly this season, he's been a pretty mediocre quarterback. But he has played some really good defenses. He played, the Chicago Bears. He's played the Green Bay Packers. He's played the Jacksonville Jaguars. And against the Jaguars, he actually had a pretty nice day. He actually put up, I think, 22 fantasy points against the Jaguars. This week he's playing the Chargers, who are just decimated with injuries. Like, they have, I believe, only one player in their secondary that's a starter from the beginning of the season. So it's all backup players in there at the secondary. Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders have both been very efficient. I know Sanders is a little bit gimped up, so who knows if he'll play. But they've been both pretty efficient wide receivers out there. They've proven that Flacco's proven that he can get the ball to them, and they've proven that they can be reliable wide receivers out there for him. Philip Lindsay is a guy who can receive out of the backfield and make a lot out of a little. The Chargers defense is just very exposable. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Flacco gets upwards of 300 yards and, gets, let's say, 200 to 300 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns. That's his ceiling. And his floor is also not so bad. I would say his floor is like 200 yards and 1 touchdown and, an interception maybe in there as well. But I think he's a nice, safe play if you're in a pinch, in an emergency situation, and there's probably 100% chance that Flacco's on your waiver wire. So if you really need a quarterback this week, 1 week streaming option, Flacco might not be the worst idea. So that does it for this episode of Joel Empey Talks NFL. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope comment about what you thought about my power rankings, where you agree and where you disagree. I'm sure that you have a ton of disagreements with my power rankings there. Once again, I didn't look at anybody else's power rankings, so my opinion was not tainted by any other opinions. It was 100% my own. So I'm interested to see what you guys think of my power rankings. Comment below what you thought. Please like the video if you did enjoy it. Please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the subscriptions. Follow me on Twitter at Empey Talks. You can see that right there. Yeah, that does it for this episode. Until next time. Cheers, friends.